My name, Lucy Collins, and at 31 years old. I scrolled my phone while waiting for the kettle to whistle. A reminder from Sarah popped up, our weekly meme exchange. I smiled, as always, at her ridiculous sense of humor. She'd been my friend for 12 years, my confidant through every heartbreak and triumph. There was a comfort in that constancy, and yet a strange knot formed in my stomach, one I couldn't name. I pulled up Pinterest, thinking about the new dessert I wanted to try for dinner. Typing chocolate souffle into the search bar, I paused when a suggestion popped up below. E&J forever. I frowned. I didn't recognize it, but curiosity nudged me anyway. The moment I clicked, my chest tightened. Hundreds of pins, each meticulously curated. Wedding venues, floral arrangements, cake designs, dresses that made my stomach lurch, honeymoon destinations I had once dreamt of with Jacob. And in every corner of this board, notes scrawled in familiar handwriting. Can't wait to marry my soulmate. Perfect for our big day. Countdown to freedom. My hands shook as I scrolled. My mind refused to connect the dots, flitting between disbelief and horror. My fingers hovered over the screen as the reality sank in. 8 months. He had been planning this for 8 months. And S? Sarah, my best friend. I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge until my knuckles turned white. No, this isn't real. It can't be real. He loves me. We've been married for years. He wouldn't, would he? My thoughts collided with evidence too clear to ignore. Each pin was a little dagger, engagement rings, honeymoon locations, notes about the color of the linens, even a whole section labeled Countdown to Freedom. I remember the coffee I'd left cooling on the counter. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. My pulse pounded in my ears. I felt dizzy, nauseated, and yet strangely alert. The shock hadn't yet curdled into anger, though I knew it would. For now, there was only disbelief. I needed answers. Not confrontations yet, just understanding. I logged into our shared iPad, hesitating only briefly before typing the password we'd never changed. Technically, it wasn't hacking, but it felt like crossing a line I'd sworn never to approach. The email account opened easily, and the digital evidence began to surface in pieces. Messages between Jacob and Sarah, casual, innocent in tone at first glance. But a pattern emerged. They were meeting, confiding, sharing small complaints about me. One note caught my attention. He was working late again. If you were my wife, you'd make time for me. And Sarah's reply, you deserve better. You know that. That was when it hit me. The board, the emails, the planning. It wasn't just a harmless fantasy. There had been an emotional intimacy, a secret life forming right under my nose. I sat there for hours, documenting everything. Screenshots, printouts, even recording the scrolling process on the iPad. The printer groaned, as if begrudgingly bringing each proof to life. Each piece of evidence was heavier than the last, a tangible weight pressing on my chest. My mind refused to let go of the horrifying clarity. He had been imagining a life with her, while I believed we were building one together. By mid-afternoon, the first waves of anger began to creep in, interlaced with heartbreak. I found myself whispering questions to the empty kitchen. How could he do this? How could she do this? Did I miss the signs? But beneath the shock and rising fury, a strange, cold clarity settled over me. I needed to see it through, to understand the full extent before confronting anyone. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a carefully orchestrated emotional plan, and I couldn't allow myself to react without all the pieces. I closed the laptop, but the images lingered behind my eyes. The dream wedding with Sarah's name on it, notes full of anticipation, laughter, and secrets. My hands still trembled as I touched the handle of my coffee mug, now cold and bitter. The quiet of the house felt oppressive, and yet, amidst the panic, I felt a spark of determination. I would uncover everything. I would know the truth, every plan, every note, every hint of what had been brewing in the shadows of my marriage. And when I did, I would decide, carefully, deliberately, how to confront Jacob and Sarah. For now, I sat in silence, heart racing, mind sharpened, aware that nothing would ever be the same. And I knew, with an unshakable certainty, that the next few hours, the next few days, would unravel a life I had trusted blindly. I didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of a reckoning. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the laptop and the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. I sat at the dining table, a thin shaft of sunlight cutting across the scattered printouts in my trembling hands. Coffee, long forgotten, had gone cold hours ago. I didn't care. All that mattered now was the truth. I reopened Jacob's email account. Every message, every calendar invite, every tiny interaction between him and Sarah felt like a betrayal freshly unearthed. At first, the emails seemed innocent. Friendly exchanges, jokes, subtle complaints. But as I dug further, patterns emerged. Coffee meetups, late-night texts, whispered confidences that I wasn't supposed to know. The closeness wasn't physical, but it was every bit as intimate and every bit as violating. One email made me pause. Dated 8 months ago, Sarah had written, "You deserve someone who notices you. Why can't he see what you need?" Jacob's reply was immediate, warm, reassuring, almost tender. "I'll always be here. Don't worry, I understand you." My stomach churned. My husband had been emotionally investing in her, planning their future together in secret, while I thought we were sharing the same life. I leaned back, trying to breathe. My mind raced with questions. How did I miss this? Did I ever notice the little things? The extra texts, the unexplained smiles at his phone, the way he sometimes drifted away when I wanted conversation? I could almost see the web now, each thread connecting them, wrapping around the life we had built together, unseen but suffocating. I printed more evidence, each page heavier than the last. Wedding venues, honeymoon destinations, floral designs. The fantasy had been meticulously constructed, as if they were living a parallel reality while I slept beside him. I noted timestamps, cross-referenced emails with the pins on the Pinterest board, and realized that this wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was 8 months of careful, sustained planning. And then came the small things that broke me. A calendar invite labeled V&J Dream Consultation, a screenshot of Sarah sending Jacob a dress color poll, and a note scribbled under a pin. "Perfect for our big day. Jason will love this." My throat tightened. They weren't just planning emotionally, they were planning a life together. I tried to focus on logic. There's no physical affair. There's no sex, no kissing, no stolen nights. But this is emotional intimacy in its purest form. He's placing her in the center of his future, and I'm... what? The placeholder? The wife he already has? My hands shook as I realized the depth of manipulation. For hours I scrolled, documented, cross-checked. Notes in his handwriting, emojis, affectionate phrases. They all pointed to a secret I had never been meant to find. I could almost hear them laughing together, sharing inside jokes that were mine to have, that I had trusted them with. The betrayal wasn't just between them. It was a knife twisting in the foundation of my life, my marriage, my friendships. And yet, amidst the rising tide of anger, fear, and grief, I felt a thread of resolve begin to knot within me. I wasn't going to explode, not yet. I wasn't going to confront them, while my emotions dictated my actions. I needed clarity, I needed strategy, and most of all, I needed to understand the full scope before I allowed them, or myself, to decide what would happen next. I closed the laptop for a moment, letting the sun warm my face. The quiet house felt heavier now, as if it too had absorbed the weight of my discovery. I realized that the betrayal was not just emotional, it was a testament to a pattern I had never seen, a deliberate plan for a life that didn't include me. And somewhere in that realization, I found a strange, fierce clarity. I would not be a passive participant. I would uncover every detail, every hidden plan, every whisper between them that had been hidden in plain sight. And when I did, I would decide, with precision, intelligence, and calm resolve, how to confront Jacob and Sarah. I would reclaim control over my life. For now, I only watched, documented, and waited. The storm was gathering, and I could feel it at the edges of my consciousness, patient and inevitable. The next confrontation would not be casual. It would not be quiet. It would be calculated, deliberate, and it would expose the truth in full. The clock ticked on. The sunlight shifted across the table, and I knew that the unraveling of everything I thought I understood about my life, my marriage, and my closest friend had only just begun. The evening was quiet, almost too quiet. Jacob was sitting on the sofa, absent-mindedly scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest. I had rehearsed this moment countless times in my mind, walking through every word, every pause, every breath. I would be calm, measured. I would not allow him to twist the truth or my feelings into something I didn't recognize. I took a deep breath, clutched the stack of printouts in one hand, and sat across from him. "Jacob," I began, my voice steady, almost deceptively so. He looked up, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "What is it?" I placed the first printout on the coffee table between us. Screenshots of the Pinterest board, each one meticulously labeled and dated. "I found this," I said simply, letting the weight of the paper speak for me. Jacob's brow furrowed. I don't understand. What?" I cut him off, the calm in my voice forcing him to pause. "Do you? Because I do. 8 months of pins, emails, notes. You've been planning a life, a wedding, with Sarah, my best friend." The words hung in the air like smoke. I watched him slowly go pale, eyes darting to the images I'd laid out. "Lucy, wait. This isn't what it looks like." I shook my head. "It looks exactly like what it is. You've been emotionally investing in her, building a future with her while I thought we were building one together." He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. It wasn't real. I love you. You know I love you." I felt my chest tighten, a familiar ache that came with heartbreak mixed with betrayal. I forced myself to stay seated, to breathe. "Love isn't measured by kisses or nights in bed, Jacob. Love is measured by trust, by choices, by whether or not you plan another life without the person you promised to share your life with." His shoulders slumped, guilt spreading across his face. "Lucy, I never meant to hurt you. I held up a hand. "Do not say that. You didn't mean anything. You acted. You planned. You shared your dreams with her while leaving me in the dark. I could have ignored a mistake, a lapse in judgment. But this was intentional." He looked at me, eyes wide, almost pleading. "It was never physical. We never—" I leaned forward, voice low, cutting. "Physical? This wasn't about sex, Jacob. It was about your heart, your time, your future. You built a world with her in secret. Every affectionate note, every 'can't wait to marry my soulmate,' that was your choice, and it betrayed me." For a long moment, silence filled the room, heavier than any argument. I could see the remorse in his eyes, but that was not enough. Not anymore. My mind raced with everything I had uncovered, the timestamps, the calendars, the carefully orchestrated board. I could see the patterns of manipulation, the slow, deliberate cultivation of intimacy with someone else. "I need you to understand," I continued, softer now, but no less firm. "This isn't just about being angry or hurt. It's about reality versus fantasy. You created a fantasy life with her and expected me to keep living in your half-truths. That's not marriage. That's not love. That's deceit." He swallowed hard, looking at the floor. I see that now. I really do. I don't know what to say." "You don't get to say anything yet," I replied, standing to regain my own sense of power. "First, I need space to process. I need clarity, and then we will have to decide what this means for us, for our marriage, for my friendship with Sarah. I will not be passive in this. I will not let this continue." He nodded, small, defeated, silent. I could see that he realized for the first time the depth of what he had done. But I also knew this was only the beginning. Confrontation was never just about anger. It was about understanding, boundaries, and consequences. I collected the printouts and closed the laptop. "I need the house to be mine for now," I said quietly. "Alone. I need to think." He wanted to speak again, but I left the room before he could. The hallway felt colder than usual, the familiar walls now shadows of a life I wasn't sure I wanted to return to. I stopped at the bedroom door, looking back at the living room where he still sat, small and vulnerable, but unable to repair what had been broken. I turned the lock on the door behind me and exhaled. For the first time since discovering the board, I felt a sliver of control return. The storm was still coming, and I knew it would not be easy. But I had started to reclaim my life from the betrayal, piece by piece, on my own terms. And in that quiet moment, I realized the truth. The next steps were mine to choose. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the bedroom floor, cutting through the shadows of the night's revelations. I sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed, coffee in hand, staring at the stack of printouts I had left neatly on the nightstand. Jacob was still sleeping, unaware of how profoundly his choices had shifted the dynamics of our lives. I knew what I had to do first: set boundaries, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I needed to reclaim my space, my emotional stability, and my sense of self. The betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was an architecture, carefully built, and it was time to dismantle it. I opened my phone and typed a message to Sarah. Every word was deliberate. I did not want anger, I wanted accountability. "We need to talk. No distractions, no excuses. Meet me at the cafe at noon." The reply came almost immediately. "Sure, what's this about?" I didn't respond. I wanted her to come with only the weight of the pending conversation, not the shield of denials or justifications. I spent the morning preparing myself, reviewing every email, every pin, every detail. My anger was present, simmering, but it was tempered by clarity. I wasn't going to crumble or beg. I would confront this logically, emotionally, and with unwavering honesty. When Sarah arrived, her smile faltered the moment she saw me. I could see it. Recognition, guilt, fear. I didn't allow her time to speak first. "I know," I said simply. Her lips parted, then closed again. "I know everything, Sarah. The board, the emails, the late-night plans, every little note, every fantasy you shared with him while I thought we were friends." Her face drained. "Lucy, Don't," I interrupted. "Not yet. I need you to hear this. What you did wasn't harmless. It wasn't just a fantasy. You were emotionally building a life with him, behind my back. And you didn't stop. You didn't think about me once in 8 months." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know how it would feel." I shook my head. Intent doesn't erase impact. Your carelessness, maybe it started as curiosity or comfort, became betrayal. And you need to understand that before we even begin discussing what happens next. She nodded, voice small. "I understand." I took a deep breath. "This changes everything, Sarah. Our friendship, my marriage, everything. I can't just pretend this didn't happen. You and Jacob, he has a role in this too, have both violated my trust. And I need time and space to decide what, if anything, comes next." When the conversation ended, I walked out of the cafe with a strange mixture of relief and grief. Relief because the truth was finally out in the open. Grief because a friendship I had valued for over a decade was fractured, perhaps irreparably. Returning home, I confronted Jacob again, but this time with decisions, not questions. "I need clarity," I said firmly. "We need boundaries. You will not contact Sarah outside of what is absolutely necessary, and I will not tolerate this emotional infidelity again. And..." I paused, letting the gravity of my next words settle. "I'm going to need space to think about our marriage. Right now, that space is the house, alone. You will respect that." Jacob's face registered a mix of guilt, fear, and helplessness. "Lucy, please." "No," I said, calm, resolute. "I'm not negotiating. I'm defining what is necessary for me to heal. If you care about us, you will respect that." He nodded silently, and for the first time, I sensed the weight of responsibility settle on him fully. There were no excuses left, no hiding. The choices had been made, and now the consequences were unavoidable. I spent the next week alone in the house, each day reclaiming a fragment of the life that had been overshadowed by deception. I organized rooms, unpacked boxes long neglected, and allowed myself moments of grief without letting them consume me. I wrote, I reflected, and I planned. I also reached out to a counselor, knowing that processing this betrayal required professional guidance. Therapy became a mirror, forcing me to examine my emotions without letting them dictate rash decisions. It helped me understand one painful truth. Emotional betrayal, even without physical infidelity, leaves scars just as deep, and rebuilding trust, if it is ever possible, requires complete transparency, accountability, and time. By the end of the week, I felt stronger, more grounded. I was still hurt, still angry, but I also felt clarity and control returning. I had confronted the people who had betrayed me, established boundaries, and begun to envision a life beyond the shock of their deception. The next steps were clear. I would decide the future of my marriage, the remnants of my friendship, and the space in which I would heal. But I would do it on my terms, not theirs. The narrative of my life was mine to write, and for the first time in months, I felt the pen firmly in my hand. Weeks passed, each day a mixture of routine and reckoning. The house felt different now, still familiar, yet stripped of the illusion that had once made it a shared haven. Jacob had retreated into quiet remorse, keeping his distance, respecting the boundaries I had imposed. I felt the strange relief of solitude, a weight lifted by clarity and self-determination. I spent hours walking through memories, sorting them into boxes, both literal and mental. Photos of vacations, small notes from anniversaries, the remnants of daily life, all of it now filtered through a lens sharpened by betrayal. I allowed myself to feel sadness, but I did not wallow. I felt anger, yes, but it was tempered by recognition of my own strength. I had survived the uncovering of a life I never imagined, and I had done so with intelligence and restraint. I decided to meet with Sarah one final time. There was no reconciliation planned, no illusions of returning to the friendship we had known. I wanted closure. We sat on a quiet bench in the park, leaves drifting down around us. She avoided my gaze. "Lucy, I'm so sorry," she whispered. I nodded, not harshly, but with measured understanding. "I know, and I've said what needed to be said, but understand this. The trust we had is gone, maybe forever. You need to carry that knowledge with you as you move forward, because some bridges cannot be rebuilt." Her eyes glistened with tears. I understand. That was all I needed. There was no satisfaction in cruelty, only in truth. I had made the betrayal visible, confronted it, and drawn the lines that protected my heart. With Sarah, with Jacob, and within myself, the next steps were intentional. I made practical decisions, updating passwords, changing routines, and reclaiming personal space. Yet the deeper victory was emotional. I had reclaimed agency over my life. Jacob approached me one evening, quietly, after weeks of silence. He had changed, no longer the casual, distracted partner I had once known, but a man facing the consequences of his choices. "I've been thinking," he said softly, careful, "about everything. About us. About how I failed you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to try, if you'll allow it." I looked at him, the man I had loved, and the man who had deceived me. My heart didn't leap with relief. It simply recognized the truth. "Jacob, love isn't just about intention. It's about trust. You broke mine. That is not easily repaired." He nodded, understanding the gravity. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll give you time, space, whatever you need." And in that moment, I realized the path forward did not require a romantic resolution. It required self-respect, clarity, and boundaries. I could choose to rebuild, or I could choose to move on, and either choice would be valid because it came from me. I turned back to my work, to my routines, to myself. The betrayal had threatened to define me, to consume me, but instead it became the crucible in which I discovered my resilience. Months later, life had shifted in subtle but profound ways. I started new hobbies, rekindled friendships that had nothing to do with Jacob or Sarah, and allowed myself the tentative joy of new connections without the weight of expectation. I laughed again, honestly and freely. I traveled, I read, I allowed myself to breathe in a world where my decisions and my heart were mine alone. Jacob remained in my life in a limited capacity, acknowledging the damage, respecting my boundaries, and learning the hard lessons of trust and accountability. Sarah faded from my daily orbit, but the memory of the betrayal remained a reminder of the line I would never allow to be crossed again. One evening, as I sipped tea by the window, I reflected on the journey, the shock, the heartbreak, the confrontation, the resolution. I realized something essential. Betrayal, while devastating, can reveal strength we didn't know we had, and clarity, patience, and self-respect are far more powerful than vengeance or anger. I smiled faintly, a quiet, satisfied smile. The fantasy they had built, the deception they had planned, it no longer had power over me. My life was mine to shape, my trust mine to give carefully, and my heart mine to guard fiercely. In the end, the greatest revenge, the truest victory, was simply living well, living authentically, living free. I had lost illusions, yes, but I had gained something infinitely more valuable, myself.